I'd like to teach you the basics of tonguing properly on clarinet. And I have to say, when I go into a lot of schools and do workshops, this is one of the things I most commonly see challenges with the students. And I think it's because tonguing on clarinet is more challenging than most other wind instruments. Mostly because we have the mouthpiece inside our mouth and the reed inside our mouth. That makes it quite different from a brass instrument or a flute where the mouthpiece is on the external part of our mouth. So a lot of people don't quite have the feel for it. I'll show you how I teach my beginners, and this might give you some ideas on how you can teach your own students as well. So when they're tonguing, basically, if this is the tongue, we want to be aiming near the top of the reed. We don't want to go over top of it, but up near the top. When the instrument's in the student's mouth, you can have their tongue sort of run up the reed until they go over the top of it, sort of lick the reed to find that spot. That's where we want to be aiming. If I was speaking, it's like I'm saying T, T, T. Now, most people teach the syllable tu or ta, and if you're exclusively teaching clarinet players, it's handy to teach them T, because that encourages their tongue to stay high in their mouth as it does when we say E. And that's a better voicing for clarinet tone. So just a small detail, they can certainly learn from thinking tu or ta, but T is even a better syllable for your clarinetists. The best way I know of to get that feeling is to have the students put the mouthpiece in their mouth as if they were playing and to speak T, T, T. And it'll feel silly and it'll sound silly, but almost always their tongue automatically goes to the right spot on the reed, and they won't do this on their own if you're just teaching them tonguing. So I put it in my mouth, I go for my embouchure, sealing the edges. T, 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 T. Feels silly, the kids will laugh, but what you'll ask them to do as they do that is notice what part of their tongue is hitting the reed, and it should be near the tip of the tongue, and maybe even what part of the reed they're hitting. A common mistake I see with some students is they tongue lower down on the reed. It will feel to them like they're doing real tonguing, and it will sound fairly distinct to their own ears because the sound to some extent travels right to our ear through our jawbone. But to someone listening, it's a very indistinct sound. So I'll have them lick the reed, find the top, and make sure they're aiming just below the tip of the reed. So after they speak it, I have a technique I call the whisper technique. It's where I have students open their mouth so wide that they're putting virtually no pressure on the reed, and they're just allowing their air to hiss through the instrument. Now this will feel unnatural, and most people will try and close their jaw to proper pressure, and actually tone will come out, but you just encourage them for this exercise, just loosen their jaw completely. If they do that, then they can whisper T, 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 and you'll literally hear this sound, which is the tongue hitting the reed. You can hear that when they're whispering. If you don't hear the tongue hitting the reed, they're not doing it properly. And the biggest mistake I see many, many young clarinetists doing is their tongue doesn't hit the reed. So that gives them a few options. Some of them are kind of doing it with their throat. It's like they're going ga, ga, ga. Or their tongue isn't hitting the reed at all, and they're using their breath. They're going ha, ha, ha. That's probably the biggest mistake. And if it's a breath person and they're trying to do the whisper technique, you'll hear this. Virtually no articulation. So it's the easiest way for you as a teacher to diagnose, is their tongue actually hitting the reed? That whisper technique. The downside with tonguing just with your air, well, there's many downsides, but some kids get so skilled at it you can hardly hear it, is that you can't do it fast. Our tongue can move very fast. If we're playing ta-ta-ta, 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 we can tongue fast. Our breath can't go very fast. It's going to limit them. And also, they're stopping their breath after every note, which is going to cause their tone to fuzz out and decay. So those are the students that might sound very good slurred, but they don't sound good when they're tonguing. So we're going through our steps, have them whisper, and then morph from whispering into sound, which means they slowly bring their air to a faster speed and change their embouchure back to normal. So I'll kind of go from whispering to half whispering to full sound, trying to keep my tongue as a little tonguing machine doing the same thing. And that technique, going from whispering to full tongue, it's the only tool I found that works for the student who's trained themselves to throat or huff their notes instead of tonguing it. So if you're trying to correct someone, it's a really good exercise to use, and one that for some reason it's very comfortable for them to whisper tongue even if they can't do it on the clarinet. So kind of morphing from whispering to real tone will help. Now for all your clarinetists, the most common bad habit that you'll see when they tongue is that there's a natural instinct to stop blowing after each note. It's like our body likes to go and we put in pauses with the air. A more advanced student might not put in a huge pause, but their air will still decay. I don't know why it is, but every single clarinetist I've ever seen does it. So I'm sure your students do it as well, and we need to train them out of that. We need the air to be like a fast air hose. And what I tell students, if I could take my tongue outside of my mouth and see it from the outside, like inside out tonguing, my tongue will block the air, but I'm still blowing. It would be like this. That's inside out tonguing. My air is unchanged. When I do that with my clarinet in my mouth, my tongue is stopping the reed for a moment, but the air is still blowing. And you can do that with the whisper technique. If a student is huffing, you'll hear that break. So again, I love using the whisper technique as a way for the student themselves to hear what their breath is doing, to hear if the air is moving solidly through there. And again, morphing to real tone, you'll hear that. You'll especially notice that some students have trouble tonguing in the high register. If they do, there's probably a 95% chance the reason they're having trouble is they've let their air pressure down and they don't have enough air to start the next note. You'll hear something like this. There's just this awkward pause to the note. Well, I went up to a high C, thumb and register key, which is a really reactive note. When I don't have enough air pressure for that, it's not going to come out. So I want to have that inside out tonguing. And you can have a student just play one high note, maybe even just a high G, and imagine that their tongue is just a little machine with super fast air. As soon as we hear that pause, then we can hear the tones not so strong, and it's going to feel harder for the student to play. We want it to be easy for them so they have a good time. So teaching them to keep their air constant while they tongue is really important. That's kind of the basics of tonguing, and I think using that whisper technique will really help you to teach those concepts, and it'll help the students to be able to go home and work on it on their own.